It is baffling. This is someone's house. It's 7 feet wide. Cheers. Hey, it's Sean, and welcome to our travel channel. Today we are in historic Alexandria, so we're going to be checking out some of the best places such as the Waterfront area, King Street, and much more. You definitely want to stay tuned. Before we start our adventure, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now follow me as we see what this historic city has to offer. Market Square is a great place to start our adventure. It's been around since the town was founded back in 1749, and it has been a hub of activity. It has one of the oldest U.S. farmers markets since it's been established, and even George Washington sold his produce here. So it's a great place to come here, grab something from the farmers market on a Saturday, or you can check out a lot of the boutiques and shops and restaurants along the way. Gadsby's Tavern was a popular place back in the 1700s. People would come here to get a bite to eat or stay at the inn. Now today it has a museum and a restaurant. For the museum, you can tour the ballroom, see what life was like back in the 1700s. The restaurant, you can even get favorites such as George Washington's favorite meal of a half-roasted duck, roasted potatoes, and corn pudding. JLU travel tip. You definitely want to come down one of these old cobblestone back alleys. It takes you back to the 18th century with the stone and the brick. I mean, I feel like George Washington could be around the corner right now. The Stabler-Leadbeater Apothecary Museum is obviously a highlight of the city. It was established in 1792 and went to 1933 where it was a functioning apothecary. But you can go take a museum tour. They also have special tours upon request. So it's really cool. And also they have a lot of original artifacts from back in the day. And this is just a staple that is important to the community as it was one of the longest continuous businesses, family businesses that is, in the area. Alexandria has such a deep history, spanning 300 years, and probably the most iconic thing about this town is the architecture. And yet there are so many different buildings that you want to see. City Hall, Gadsby Tavern, and so much more. But there is one building in particular that stands out. So you're going to stay tuned as we check that one out. The house behind me is the Spite House, which is the skinniest house in America at 7 feet wide. And you must be wondering, how did something like this ever happen? Well, the owner, back in the 1800s, John Hollinsbury, was getting sick and tired of loiterers and carriages going up and down the alley, so he created a house. That way he didn't have any noise. But it's super skinny. I don't know if I personally could live in there, but if you could, definitely comment below. Reinforce the fact that this is someone's home. And that's their doorway. I would like to know how they get a couch or something like that in there if they can.
It's a normal sized door.
No, this is a skinnier door.
Okay, but it's not that small.
It's pretty skinny. Alexandria was filled with cobblestone streets back in the 1700s. Nowadays, there's a few streets such as Princess that still have the cobblestone street and the original stones when it was restored. I mean, it just takes you back in time, and if you want to see cobblestone streets, Princess is where it's at. Alexandria has a lot of great museums, but one of the most notable museums is the Carlyle house. Now, we've heard there are some great things in the house itself, but it's such a nice day and there's some gardens. So we're gonna take a look at the outside, and of course, being garden lovers, soak up the sun and enjoy all the plants and trees. The Carlyle house was the home of John Carlyle, a wealthy merchant and one of the founders of Alexandria. His house is one of the best examples in the US of Georgian residential architecture, which is kind of like a old 17th century English stone manor. It's really cool to see. There is a small fee to enter into the museum, but very affordable. But I think Andrea and I are going to take a look at some of these beautiful gardens coming up. Even though the garden is like 3/4 of an acre, it's still really beautiful. I mean, it's fall, the leaves are changing. Just go back in time in the 1700s, this would have been a lot of land, well-maintained gardens, and beautiful flowers all over. So you just gotta close your eyes and just imagine you're back in time. What's really cool about the gardens is back in the 1700s when John Carlyle was here, this property was like 15 feet above the Potomac River. So it's amazing and remarkable how much this area has changed, as now you have streets filled with different houses and merchants and boutique shops. It's just remarkable of how far along the area has come. As we explore the historic part of Alexandria, it's not lost on Andrea and I that a lot of these homes and businesses were operated by enslaved African Americans. And even John Carlyle had 9 enslaved African Americans on his inventory list. It just gives you a picture of what life was really like, and even historians now are piecing together what people's lives were like back in those days. The gardens were absolutely lovely. We did think about going into the Carlyle house, but we're going to save that for a future visit. We have a couple ideas for that. Our next stop is over to King Street, and that's for 2 reasons. One, it is one of the biggest highlights or biggest things to do in Alexandria. And 2, we've kind of worked up a little bit of an appetite, so we're going to see if we can find a snack or treat that we can enjoy. King Street is filled with cafes, restaurants, boutiques, different shops, and it seems to span the whole city. As you get closer to the waterfront, it seems to get even more busy. But in this particular stretch, Andrea and I noticed an ice cream shop, and we definitely have to partake since it's a warm, sunny fall day. There's a bunch of different options, Pops, Hillwinds, and the Creamery, which is what we chose. I got Oreo cookie and Andrea got raspberry cheesecake. I don't think we could have gone wrong. Cheers. Welcome to the waterfront. This spot is ranked as one of the most picturesque locations to the Potomac and Washington, D.C., and I think it definitely delivers. Not only can you use a water taxi to get here, but you could also enjoy a nice cruise if you want to explore the river a little bit more. And of course, just exploring by walking is always a great option. There are so many different museums in Alexandria, but the Torpedo Factory Art Center is a must-do. There are 3 floors jam-packed with art, so we're going to explore and see what we can find here. As we walk around, I mean, there are so many different artists. You have paintings, jewelry, any type of artwork, you name it. It seems to be very similar to our Asheville experience, where you can go and see an artist studio, their workshop, and maybe if they're there, you can ask them a couple questions about their artwork. All the artwork can be overwhelming, and if art isn't your thing, the Alexandria Archeology Museum is also located here. So if that's your cup of tea, you could definitely check that out. One of the best things about the Art Center is that it's completely free, so it's great for a budget traveler. We traveled south of Old Town Alexandria to Jones Point Park. The park itself, way back in the 1700s, was a bustling harbor, had merchants, but Nowadays, it's a park with hiking and biking trails, but there are also a couple key things I want to point out. And over here is actually one of them. And to the average person, this item looks like an ordinary piece of stone or a marker. But this was actually one of the boundary stones of Washington, D.C. When they created Washington, D.C., it was a square or a diamond. It included land in Maryland and Virginia, both sides of the Potomac. But when they redistricted everything, they gave the Virginia part back to Virginia. So it's really cool that this part, we would actually be standing in Washington, D.C. land right now. Another thing that's a must-see in the park is the Lighthouse, which is right behind me. Now, before we go into any details, let's go take a look closer. We're at Jones Point Lighthouse, which was built in the 1800s, and it's the last riverine lighthouse in Virginia. And it's crazy to imagine that lighthouses were used back in the day along the river here, but they had many, many different ships as it was a bustling port. Now today, you can't go in the lighthouse, but it's a great place to take a couple photos and take in the scenery. As we explore more of the park, we found a lot more than just one boundary stone. It's just a huge reminder of like what DC used to look like way back in the day. Right next to me or behind me is a bridge, and you might be thinking, John, that just seems like a normal bridge. Well, it is the George Washington Memorial Parkway with the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. And what's so special about this is the parkway goes from Virginia, Maryland, and of course DC, and it's a great way to experience the area as there's 25 historic sites that you can pull over and see. So it's a great way if you're a traveler to see a bunch of really cool places. We had a blast. I think the park, Old Town Alexandria, great to explore. Follows probably the best season to see the leaves and the atmosphere. There is so much to do. We have more adventures coming your way. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can follow along. But until next time, keep on exploring.